Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Kane's voice broke so badly that the whole courtroom seemed to hold its breath as he walked forward, the chains on his wrists making soft sounds on the smooth marble floor. His proud stance was gone, replaced by something broken and hopeless. His eyes were only on Lily, like she was the only thing left in a world that was falling apart. When he spoke again, it wasn't the voice of someone fighting to be free, but of a person who wanted to be punished, to be forgiven, or to be destroyed. Anything except this helpless waiting. "Slap me," he cried, and the words were like a loud shot, making people in the gallery whisper and Lily's breath catch. Her hands shook by her side as memories flooded her. Stolen kisses in the Chancellor Gardens, secret promises under the stars, the night she thought he was dead, the day she found out he lied, and the moment she realized the man she loved could destroy everything. Even now, with him crying in front of a judge, lawyers, reporters, and people who were happy to see him fall, her heart wouldn't completely shut down. Tears burned behind her eyes as the judge slammed the gavel, telling Kane to calm down. But Kane only laughed, a broken, crazy sound, and confessed everything in a rush of words. How he told himself lies were a way to protect his family. How each bad choice pulled him deeper into darkness until he didn't even know who he was anymore. His confession made even his worst enemies quiet, as he admitted that losing Lily was the real punishment he couldn't live with. Then Lily stepped forward, her heels echoing like thunder with each step, and everyone watched as she stood before him. They all expected her to slap him, but instead she stopped just inches from his face, her voice shaking as she whispered that the worst punishment wasn't pain. It was living with the truth of everything he had broken. Those words hit Kane harder than any punch, and his shoulders collapsed as he cried, the judge watching closely as the emotional moment almost stopped the trial. The prosecutors kept going, talking about the evidence, the lies, and the damage he had caused, while his lawyers said his breakdown showed he was sorry, that his crimes were out of fear, not bad intentions. Lily went back to her seat as the judge called for silence and prepared to deliver the verdict. The tension in the room was thick, like something alive. Kane stood shaking, wiping his face with trembling hands, and finally looked at Lily one last time, silently saying, "I'm sorry." The judge's voice cut through the air like a knife, telling the story of what Kane had done, acknowledging the harm and the real sadness in his remorse. The courtroom gasped as the judge paused, the silence too heavy to bear, and then he announced the verdict, guilty, but with a lighter sentence than anyone expected. It meant Kane wouldn't get the maximum punishment, but he would spend years away from Lily, years haunted by what he did. Lily felt a mix of relief and sadness as Kane nodded, accepting the verdict with a quiet surrender. He was led away, still shaking, and turned back just once to look at Lily, a look that said all the words he couldn't say. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Lily stayed seated, tears finally falling as she realized that the man who begged her to slap him was already broken in ways no sentence could fix. And as the doors closed behind Kane, the echo of his "please slap me" remained like a ghost, a reminder that in Genoa City, justice never came without heartbreak, and love, once broken, could never be put back together, only remembered in pieces sharp enough to cut forever. Kane's first night in prison didn't start quietly. It began with loud noises, metal doors slamming like gunshots, shouts echoing through the cold, concrete hallways, the sound of boots scraping against the floor, and the clinking of keys. Each sound hit him like a slap to the face, reminding him that freedom was gone, a thing he could no longer think about. His wrists still ached from where the cuffs had been taken off, and he was led down a narrow hallway that smelled of bleach, sweat, and sadness. The lights above buzzed like annoying insects, making the place feel even worse. With every step, Kane felt like part of his old life was peeling away. Lily's face kept popping into his mind, her tears, her silence, the way she didn't hit him, a kindness that now felt like a punishment. A guard pushed him forward, shouted his number, and took away not just his name but the last hope that he still mattered. The cell door opened, revealing a tiny, cold room that felt like a box standing up. There was a thin mattress on a metal bed, a toilet without privacy, and walls covered in scratches from prisoners who had marked their time by carving into the walls. Kane stood still as the door closed, making a loud noise that shook his whole body. He realized that night wasn't going to have any speeches or apologies. No Lily to look at and beg for forgiveness. All he had was the truth, one he couldn't run from. As the hours passed, he couldn't sleep. His mind kept going over every decision that got him here, every lie he told himself, every secret he buried, every time he chose control over honesty, love over truth. It all twisted into something he couldn't recognize. Kane put his hands on his eyes, trying to erase the images, but he saw Lily more clearly than ever. He remembered how her voice had trembled when she said the worst punishment was living with the truth. And now, alone in the dark, he finally understood what she meant. The truth was inside him, heavy and suffocating, reminding him of everything he had destroyed. Distant laughter echoed through the hall, wild and cruel, followed by a scream that stopped suddenly. Kane's breath caught as fear came over him, real fear. Not the kind you feel in a courtroom, but the kind that makes your body shake. Here no one cared about feeling bad or trying to change or even about love. Weakness was the only thing that mattered, and guilt was like blood in the water. His cellmate stirred in the shadows, a big figure moving slowly toward him. His eyes glinted in the dark, and he asked what Kane had done. Kane swallowed hard and answered quietly, his voice barely heard. The man laughed, not out of cruelty but because he knew what it was like. He had been exactly where Kane now sat, broken and scared. Hours later, the lights went out, leaving the block in complete darkness, only the occasional flicker from the guard station showing the way. Kane lay on the mattress, his body tired but his soul screaming. Tears rolled down his face, even though he tried to stop them. They soaked into the pillow as he whispered Lily's name, not as a plea but as a confession. He was admitting what he had never really accepted. Love doesn't fix the damage you cause, intentions don't cancel consequences, and begging for pain doesn't mean you're free from guilt. Somewhere beyond those walls, Lily was awake too, though Kane didn't know it. They were both caught in the same night, the same memories, the same truth that couldn't be changed. As the first light of morning came through the small window, Kane realized with quiet horror that surviving this sentence wouldn't be about being strong or clever. It would be about living every day with the knowledge of everything he had lost. And as the first hint of morning crept in, Kane closed his eyes not in peace, but in surrender, knowing that this first night was just the start. The real punishment wasn't the bars around him. It was the man he would have to live with inside them. Lily didn't break in the courtroom, not when the verdict was read, not when Kane was led away in chains, not when the whispers followed her like vultures. But the moment the courthouse doors closed behind her and the cold air hit her lungs, something inside her finally splintered beyond repair, her body locking up as if it no longer recognized how to move forward, her heels scraping against the stone steps while flashes exploded from cameras she couldn't see, reporters shouting questions she couldn't hear, all of it blurring together until the only sound left was the echo of Kane's voice in her head, that broken plea, slap me, repeating like a curse she couldn't silence. Lily stumbling to her car and gripping the door handle so tightly her knuckles went white, refusing to cry until she was alone, until the world stopped watching, and the second the door slammed shut she collapsed forward over the steering wheel, a scream ripping out of her chest so violently it stole her breath. Years of restraint detonating all at once as tears streamed down her face unchecked, her hands pounding the wheel again and again as she cried out Kane's name. Not in love, not in forgiveness, but in fury and devastation tangled so tightly she couldn't tell them apart, memories assaulting her without mercy. The man who once promised her safety, the man who swore honesty, the man who became a stranger built from lies, Lily gasping as if drowning. Her mind replaying the moment she refused to slap him, realizing now that it wasn't strength that stopped her. It was fear that if she touched him one last time, she'd shatter completely. The drive home a blur of red lights and blurred vision, Lily barely remembering parking, barely remembering unlocking the door, until she stepped into the quiet of her living room and the silence hit harder than any verdict, the absence of Kane's presence screaming at her from every corner. His mug still in the kitchen cabinet, his jacket still hanging, where she had never bothered to move it, Lily ripping it down with a sob and pressing it to her face, inhaling deeply as if she could still find him there, anger surging as she hurled it across the room. Screaming at the walls that loving him shouldn't have cost her everything, that believing in him shouldn't have ended like this, Lily sinking to the floor amid shattered fragments of the life she thought she had, shaking uncontrollably as guilt crept in like poison, whispering that she could have stopped this sooner, that she ignored signs that maybe, just maybe, she was complicit in her own heartbreak, the thought unbearable as she clawed at her chest trying to breathe, panic closing in as her vision darkened and she pressed her forehead to the cold floor, whispering over and over that she was fine, that she had survived worse, that she was strong, until strength abandoned her completely. Hours passing unnoticed as dusk turned to night, Lily eventually dragging herself up and staring at her reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back, eyes red and hollow, jaw clenched with rage, and suddenly the tears stopped, not because the pain faded, but because something else took its place, something sharper, colder, Lily straightening as a realization settled in with terrifying clarity. Kane's sentence didn't end her suffering, it only began it, and she was done being the collateral damage of his choices, done being the woman who absorbed the consequences while he begged for absolution. Her phone buzzing on the counter, a message from an unknown number lighting up the screen, Lily hesitating before reading it, her heart dropping as the words stared back at her. He won't survive long in there without help. The message unsigned, ominous, Lily's hands trembling as the weight of the implication settled in, fear and fury colliding as she realized the verdict hadn't closed the chapter. It had cracked open something far more dangerous. Lily, gripping the phone and whispering Kane's name one last time, not as a vow or a plea, but as a warning, because as her breaking point hardened into resolve, Lily understood that grief had transformed her into someone new, someone capable of choices she never imagined, and in that quiet, shattered room, with tears finally dry and eyes burning with purpose, Lily crossed an invisible line, one where love no longer ruled her decisions, and the aftermath of the verdict was about to claim far more victims than anyone saw coming. The secret didn't surface in the courtroom because it had been buried too carefully, wrapped in sealed exhibits, redacted transcripts, and a last-minute sidebar the judge ordered struck from the record. But once the verdict was handed down and Kane disappeared behind prison walls, the truth clawed its way out with violent timing, beginning with a single envelope slid under Lily's door just before dawn, unmarked, thick, and heavy with implication, Lily staring at it for a long moment before opening it with shaking hands, her breath catching as she pulled out photocopies of evidence she had never been shown, security logs altered by court order, a suppressed witness statement, and most devastating of all, a recorded deposition stamped inadmissible in bold red letters, Lily's heart pounding as she read the words that made her stomach drop. Kane had confessed to a crime he did not fully commit, taking responsibility for actions that legally belonged to someone else, someone powerful enough to make the evidence disappear. The deposition revealing that on the night everything went wrong, Kane wasn't the mastermind the prosecution painted him to be but the final shield, stepping in to protect a second player whose name was deliberately removed from every official document. Lily's hands trembling as she followed the trail of redactions and initials that pointed unmistakably toward Genoa City's elite, realizing with sick clarity that the judge's leniency hadn't been mercy, it had been a compromise, a silent deal struck to close the case without exposing a scandal that would have destroyed reputations far larger than Kane's. The realization detonating inside her as rage eclipsed grief, Lily pacing the room as the implications sank in, understanding now why Kane begged her to slap him, why he collapsed so completely, why his remorse felt heavier than guilt alone, because he had chosen prison over betrayal, punishment over exposing the truth. Lily's phone buzzing violently in her hand as an unknown number rang through, her answering without thinking, freezing as Kane's voice came through distorted and low, telling her she was never supposed to see those papers, that the truth was more dangerous than the sentence he received, his voice cracking as he warned her to let it go, to burn the evidence, to protect herself, Lily whispering that the trial had already destroyed her, and Kane responding with a single sentence that shattered what little certainty she had left. If this comes out, people will die. The line going dead as Lily stood frozen, the weight of the secret crushing her chest, the world outside continuing as if nothing had changed while she realized everything had. News breaking hours later that a key prosecution witness had suddenly left town, another retracting their statement, rumors spreading through Genoa City like wildfire as insiders whispered that the case wasn't as clean as it appeared. Lily watching the chaos unfold on television, her reflection staring back at her from the dark screen as she understood the truth the trial tried to erase. Kane's conviction wasn't the end of the story, it was the cover-up, and now that she held the secret everyone else fought to bury, Lily faced a choice more terrifying than any verdict. Stay silent and let Kane rot for a crime that wasn't fully his, or expose the truth and ignite a chain reaction that would burn through Genoa City's most powerful families, the justice system. itself and whatever remained of her own safety, Lily clutching the envelope to her chest as dawn broke, knowing with absolute certainty that the secret from the trial hadn't just survived, it had awakened, and once unleashed, nothing and no one would escape its fallout.